and that they could bring the Ayatollah back, who had been away in Paris and comes back in, establishes Islamic Republic. We're seeing Jimmy Carter, who made a political decision, set prophecy in place because Iran is a major player in the end times. Now, what else did Jimmy Carter do? He invited Menachem Begin, who was at that time Prime Minister of Israel. He invited Anwar Sadat, who at that time was the president of Egypt. They came to Camp David, the recreational retreat area for the presidents there in Maryland. They had a long couple of days of conversation, and they came forth with the Camp David Accords. You know what that was? That was the very first peace treaty that Israel signed with any of her neighbors, a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. That took place under the leadership of Jimmy Carter, who was then president of the United States. Let me jump over a couple of years to the time of Bill Clinton. There's a lot I could tell you about Bill Clinton. I don't have the time to do that, but let me tell you what significantly he did. On September the 13th, 1993, he invited then Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, to come to the White House. He also invited the chairman of the PLO, Yasser Arafat. They came to the White House for the purpose of discussing a peace agreement. After their negotiations, they came forth on the White House lawn, and there was Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, President of the United States Bill Clinton, and Yasser Arafat, head of the PLO. They then produced the Oslo Accords. Judy and I, as journalists, credentialed journalists in Israel, were not able to go to Washington, but we're at the government press office in Jerusalem. We were watching a live television feed from the White House itself, and we saw this unfolding, and we saw what they were doing. As we watched this happening, after the signing of the peace treaty, President Bill Clinton literally put his hand in the back of Yitzhak Rabin and forced him to shake hands with Yasser Arafat. I have to tell you, every single one of us weathered journalists in that room gasped. We could not believe it. These had been sworn enemies of theirself. That was the second peace agreement put in place by a president who made a political decision to set prophecy in place. The next year, 1994, the president of the United States then, Bill Clinton, comes to the Middle East. He goes to the Arava. It's an extension of the Jordan Valley down toward the Red Sea. Invited guests would be the king of Jordan at that time, King Hussein, and again, the Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin. They come center stage. They sign a peace treaty. Here's the peace treaty they signed right here. Treaty of peace between the state of Israel, Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, 26 October 1994. Judy and I were front row seats when this peace treaty was signed. There were 1,000 journalists. I'd never seen that many journalists any place in the world. 1,000 journalists. Well, maybe you remember some of them. Some have passed, but do you remember Peter Jennings of ABC, Tom Brokaw of NBC, Dan Rather of CBS, Jimmy DeYoung, all the major, I want to see if you're still awake. All of the major journalists were there, and they signed this peace treaty. This is not the original peace treaty, but a copy of it, and I was within the front row and myself that distance when they signed this peace treaty. So you now have three peace treaties on the table, the Camp David Accord, the Oslo Accord, and now the peace treaty between Israel and Jordan. You know what it says in the book of Daniel, chapter 9 and verse 27? Jot that verse down, look it up later. Chapter 9, verse 27 of Daniel says this, "And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he will cause the sacrifice to cease." Wow. You know what that prophecy passage tells us? What's going to kick off the tribulation period is the signing of a covenant or a peace treaty by the Antichrist. But no, not a signing, because that's not the word. Most people, most prophecy teachers says, when you see the Antichrist sign a peace treaty, that's the indication the tribulation has started. No, let me say the verse again. "And he," which would be the Antichrist, "shall confirm," that word in Hebrew, gabar, G-A-B-A-R, not to sign, but confirm, to make stronger, strengthen, shall confirm a covenant, a treaty with many, Jewish people and her neighbors, for 1 week, a 7-year period of time between the rapture and the return of Jesus Christ. So the confirmation of that agreement, or those 3 agreements, Camp David Accords, Oslo Accords, peace treaty between Israel and Jordan, when the Antichrist comes on the scene, he confirms those treaties, and that starts the clock ticking on the 7-year period of time. Want to see that peace treaty he's going to confirm? There it is, right there, along with the Camp David Accords and the Oslo Accords. Peace treaty on the table, not working, waiting for the Antichrist to show up and confirm it. You hear what I just said? A president named Jimmy Carter put together the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. Another president, Bill Clinton, put together the peace treaty between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And then he also, the next year, took care of a peace treaty between Jordan and Israel. Treaties on the table, not working, waiting for the Antichrist to appear, which starts the clock ticking on this 7-year period of time. All this that we hear, current events unfolding before our very eyes, trying to get our attention, were laid out in God's word so that presidents would make political decisions to set prophecy in place. December the 6th, last year, 2017. I was in a conference in Chattanooga. We stopped the conference to watch a television news report. You know what it was? President Donald Trump at the White House. Mike Pence, the vice president behind him. And the president of the United States made the most profound announcement that has ever been made by a president. Here's what he said. The United States now recognizes Jerusalem as the political capital of the Jewish people. Most profound statement ever made by a president. In the month of February, the 23rd of February, he went back into the White House and he said this, and on the 14th day of the month of May in 2018, we're going to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv into Jerusalem. Another profound announcement made by a president making a political decision to set prophecy in place. We must understand it's a principle of God's word. It's established on that verse there, 17th chapter, 17th verse of the book of Revelation. God will put in the hearts of political leaders to make political decisions to set prophecy in place. Look, we look at current events in light of biblical prophecy. Current events don't drive biblical prophecy. God's scenario in the word drives prophecy. The current events help us to recognize the times in which we're living and that the stage is set for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled. You might have understood that there's going to be a temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Preparations have been made for that. May I tell you, the Sanhedrin, the 70 wise Jewish scholars, have been reformed. They're now operating. I met with these Sanhedrin members. I know the spokesperson very well. The rabbi the other day issued a half shekel, a silver half shekel. Now that is the tax that the Jewish people, when the temple stands, will have to pay when they go up to the temple. That silver half shekel, on the back of it had a picture of the temple that they're preparing to build right now, which could be built at any time as soon as they take that Dome of the Rock down. And that's going to take about 30 seconds, so don't worry about that. But here you've got on one side of this silver half shekel, the temple. On the other side, you have two personalities, their profile, and these were two men who made decisions as leaders of the world that accomplished something that would help the temple be put up in Jerusalem. The first image is an image of Cyrus, the man who allowed the Jews, book of Ezra, chapter 1, to go back and rebuild the temple. So you have a side profile of Cyrus 2,500 years ago. Superimposed on that profile, you have a profile of the President Donald Trump. And on that silver half shekel, Donald Trump's image there, because he told the world, first time it's ever been made as a statement by a political leader, that Jerusalem is the political capital of the Jewish people.